Good morning, it's not working. Good morning, everyone.
Craig, give us a signal if you can hear us.
Can we hear in the back?
No.
They hear our voice.
But we aren't being made deaf by the feedback either.
That's true. There's the upside.
Oh, testing. Now you can hear? Great. We can't hear it up here like we normally can, but
They actually gave me a new mic. I'm a little nervous here, so I don't know.
I don't know why we get new mics before we're getting new mics. But okay, so welcome everyone to the July 16th, 2026 agenda meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. My name is Katie Sieben. I chair the commission. All other commissioners are present for today's hearing. I'll take the roll now. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
And Commissioner Tuma.
I hope I'm here.
We have 4 items on our agenda today. The first item is a reconsideration petition. Ms. Winter, thank you for your work on this. Please introduce it when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Agenda Item 1 is docket number E999/CI-24-352 in the matter of a Commission investigation into a fuel life cycle analysis framework for utility compliance with Minnesota's carbon-free standard. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission reconsider its May 14th, 2026 order? Staff has no further comments, but is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winter. Normally on petitions for reconsideration, we don't take comments from the public. Do any commissioners have questions for parties or want to address or ask any questions of any of the parties? Is there a motion?
I have a motion.
Commissioner Partridge.
Thank you. Chair Sieben, I would like to say one thing. I think there's 2 different items here, but they're very much connected in my mind. One is a request that we reconsider our decision to conduct a full fuel cycle analysis on waste-derived fuel sources. And the next is for us to conduct a fuel cycle analysis on carbon capture facilities. So the way it's worded, it doesn't say that specifically, but it says that it would like for us to clarify whether for carbon capture facilities, net emissions would be inclusive of indirect emissions occurring upstream and downstream. That, in my mind, is the definition of a full fuel cycle analysis, to consider the upstream and downstream emissions. And I do think that that is a critical consideration. And I do expect that that would be included in the calculation of net emissions for a carbon capture facility, just as it would be included in a full fuel cycle analysis for waste-derived fuels like RNG and waste wood into biomass facilities. I don't think there's any action we need to take today, because order point 15 and 16 lay out the process for a utility with a carbon capture facility or proposing a carbon capture facility to provide a proposal. It also lays out a full comment period where we would take public comments and have the agencies, both the Department of Commerce and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, provide analysis and recommendations on the proposed calculation of the partial carbon-free credit for a carbon capture facility. So I think that we would address that in each individual proposal on a case-by-case basis. And I have no doubt that our capable Pollution Control Agency, Department of Commerce, and many parties who I'm sure would participate in that would provide comments, and we would look to ensure that indirect emissions are included in that calculation. I don't think we need to take any action on that, however, and I also do feel the need to point out that it feels quite inconsistent what the CEOs have petitioned us to do, which is to not consider the full fuel cycle for certain fuels, but to consider the full fuel cycle in other cases. And so therefore, I would move number 2 to deny the petition in its entirety.
Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you. Just checking in the back. You can hear all of us when we're speaking? Yes, kind of, yes. Okay, so I think commissioners, you need to really try to eat the mic as much as possible. Good morning, Mr. Janisic. Welcome. Please introduce item number 2 when you're ready.
Hello, good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 2 is docket number 07465, involving the application of Enbridge Energy for a certificate of need for the Alberta Clipper Pipeline Project and Southern Lights Project. There are 2 questions before the Commission. Should the Commission grant a request to reconsider its May 6, 2026 order? Should the Commission grant a request to reconsider its May 6, 2026 order requiring the preparation of an environmental worksheet? There are no late filings, and staff is available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Janisic. Commissioners, are there questions for the parties? Anyone you would like to hear from? Then is there discussion of the item or a motion? Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. I can make a motion. I'd like to move a motion to deny the request. Decision option number 2.
Is there any discussion of Commissioner Hom's motion? Commissioner Tuma.
You know, I appreciate the effort by the applicant. I don't understand the need to push back on the EAW. I know there was some information put into the record from Wisconsin. It didn't influence where I was going, but I wanted to make a point. That's something why we do an EAW, okay? This is the kind of information I would want to have in an EAW, and I would want the applicant to respond to, providing information so that we can make an assessment. So I think the course that I think the statute clearly guides us is exactly where Commissioner Hom is going, and I think I'm very comfortable with that direction, given everything. But I just wanted to make sure I'm not influenced by this, because our decision is supposed to look for these things. And so it's just information that was there. So.
Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Hom, again, you move decision option 2 to deny Southern Lights' request for reconsideration.
Yes.
All in favor of Commissioner Hom's motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
No.
The motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Janisic and others.
So, Madam Chair, could we have about 5 minutes or so? There was some
For a
late
recess?
filings. Yeah, recess. There's some late filings in number 3, and we want to just make sure
Sure.
our staff is clear on what we're talking from. So,
Okay, the commission will stand in recess until 10:20 a.m.
It's 10:20.
The commission will come back from its recess. And Mr. Harvo, good morning. Please introduce agenda item number 3.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 3 is docket number IP7138 ESS 24-294 TL 24-295 involving Midwater BESS LLC in the matter of the company's application for a site permit for the up to 150 megawatt Midwater energy storage project and a route permit for the 161 kilovolt transmission line in Freeborn County, Minnesota. The questions before the commission are, should the commission adopt the administrative law judge's finding of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations? Should the commission find the environmental assessment and the record created at the public hearings address the issues identified in the scoping decision? Should the commission issue a site permit for the 150 megawatt energy storage system? Should the commission issue a route permit for the 161 kilovolt transmission line? Staff has the following opening remarks. There's a typo in the decision options. The final decision option, beginning with deny the requested route permit, was inadvertently numbered 12. The correct number should be 15. The applicant filed late reply comments to the two decision options. Copies have been given to the commissioners and made available to the public. Staff has no further remarks and is available for questions.
Thank you very much. We'll begin this morning with appearances, starting with the applicant, or on my right. Please state your name and the organization that you're representing for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Peter Rude, Chief Development Officer with Spearmint Energy on behalf of Midwater BESS LLC.
Mary Mate, Spearmint Energy, on behalf of Midwater BESS LLC.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Jeremy Deere with Frederickson and Byron on behalf of Midwater BESS.
Good morning. Jim Sullivan with the Public Utilities Commission Energy Infrastructure Permitting Group.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. And as was noted, there was a late filing last night, and I wanted to begin with that, Mr. Deere. Overall, the record, I think, supported the commission granting the permit and moving forward at this time with the overall project. And my take on your filing is that the language that you included, the green language, or the entirety of this are conditions that you're additionally agreeing to if the commission would overall approve the project and move forward. But will you please just give us an overall understanding of what the filing was and your overall preferred decision options? I assume it also includes the EIP staff recommendations that are in our briefing papers.
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, thank you very much. Yeah, we do appreciate that Commissioner Tuma filed his thoughts earlier in the week so that we had an opportunity to respond and digest that information. We all know how difficult it can be to discuss permit changes and language while we're sitting here. Yep. So the intent was to actually get something in front of you that if that's the direction you wanted to go, that we would have something that the applicant would be comfortable with, or at least something that we could discuss today. I do want to loop back, though. So it was for discussion purposes, primarily. It's not just a consent altogether, because we think there's one really important point to make here. Chair, just like you mentioned in the record and in EIP's exceptions, which presumably the commission would adopt here today, is that the risk to the river and the risk to the watershed is very low. And especially with the robust stormwater ponding conditions, right? The gating, the liner, the biochar filter, anything that would potentially get entrained in water would be collected and could be taken up. And the air dispersion modeling from the plume study would indicate that it's very unlikely that anything is going to reach the river. And if it does, it's probably carbon-based. And so there are, we would, one condition proposed by staff in particular was P9, and it required a watershed level study of pollutants so that if there was a fire event, that we would have a baseline study. That is actually directly contradictory to EIP's exception listed at E28, which struck the watershed level study as a needed thing in the environmental assessment. And so I wanted to point that out. And then the other piece with the permit conditions, Midwater does believe, so right now we have basically 4 layers of protection that are being proposed. We have Midwater itself as an LLC and its permit compliance. We have insurance, which Midwater is okay with. And then we're also proposing financial surety from day one for remediation that the EA said that it's unlikely that we need it, and a parental guarantee, which is kind of a backstop on top of all of that. So we really wanted to try to understand and try to rectify the record here, talking about how pollution is unlikely, and then now also adding all of these layers of additional protections, and it didn't seem like it matched up with the record. So we also wanted to try to understand, particularly as to the environmental remediation fund and the parent guarantee, why those in fact the commission feels they would be necessary.
So, Mr. Deere, just to then step through the preferred decision options that you would support or your client supports, what can you just walk through what numbers those would be with the modifications that you discussed?
Chair Sieben, commissioners, absolutely. So if we look to TUMA Path B, and TUMA Revised 1, 2B, 3, 4, 7, TUMA Revised 10, TUMA Revised 11A, except
P9.
we would strike P9. So it would be P1 through P8 and P10 through P20. TUMA New 11B, as revised by Midwater in the late filing, and TUMA New 11C as revised by Midwater. And then 13 and 14 for the route permit.
Okay, that's really helpful, at least for me, to kind of orient myself around your late filing and Commissioner Tuma's filing. So, Commissioner Tuma, why don't I turn it over to you then for questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That was very helpful. I think it's important to know as we proceed into this, Midwater is going to do something very positive for our grid, and so that's absolutely. I think everyone needs to understand the county is going to benefit from this because they're going to be there with the BESS. The production tax from the wind farms that are in that area are going to go up because the wind will be able to spin and they'll be able to be during constrained times providing revenue for the county. The community is going to benefit because of a more reliable system. And so that's good and positive. So we do want BESSes on our system, but it's also important to understand this. You're not Xcel, okay? I know where Xcel lives. I know where Xcel exists, and I also regulate Xcel's bottom line. And so you're a merchant. Your owners have made money as arbitraging on the electric system. This has only been around for 3 years, so we can throw the parental guarantee out. I'm not going to go toe to toe with your owners. They probably are able to hide their assets better than I could ever try to find them. So you're not Enbridge, okay? I know where Enbridge's money is. They're a second or third largest corporation in Canada. So, but I think it's also a good statement that you're willing to put your name behind the project and not just hide behind an LLC. It is a level of concern that I think the public has is because you are simply just an LLC. And I think there needs to be some assurance in the record for what you do. And so I can agree with Judge McKinsey where she says the commission should seriously consider the burden a fire or thermal runaway event should or would place on ratepayers, taxpayers, local governments, and take steps to place cost in the appropriate parties. And I think that's an assessment we can make. But I can also agree with Mr. Sullivan, who I think did a very good EA. I mean, I had the information I need. He says as to this possible runaway. However, the ALJ concluded that these risks warrant more extensive level of analysis than was ultimately provided. EIP staff respectively do not agree. Staff, as I do, believe that the characterizations of the impacts in the A supported by the analysis in the A. So the scope was laid out. He followed the scope, provided us information. I think the judge missed that, and I think the corrections that EIP staff have made to the record are sufficient. So that those two truths can be accurate at the same time. And so the question we have going forward is to come up with a solution that provides some assurance to the community. I can take your word, but I also have to make sure that those concerns are there. So if the risk is of very minimal impact to the level of around you, your insurance is going to be low, there's not going to be a problem, you're going to be able to make those guarantees because you're pretty confident they don't exist. But then the community also has some guarantees that those assurances will be taken care of. And so to my fellow commissioners, my plan B was, option B was my vision of a path forward. I think the changes that Mr. Deere has recommended are, I think, improvements to them and are, I think, technical in nature. I don't view them as trying to change them. I might have a couple suggested modifications to them to make sure that we're tracking, but I think they're going to be okay. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to run through those suggested modifications to their recommendations. I would still be pursuing the information on the parental guarantee and also on the starting the fund earlier. Again, you're not Xcel. And so having that fund start, I think, is a statement to the community. You're there for the long haul. You're not there just to be playing games. And so I understand what you're saying, that it might be something additional, but I think it's a good statement to the community. And so that's why I support it. On the conditions that you put together, Emma, if you could put up the change to their recommended 11B, and we can have a conversation here. Our staff, Mr. Harvo, was worried that the way that you writ the language is that MPCA could undercut what was, I think, in a very, as he put it, a very important statement from the advisory council on the 1.5. I could have read it both ways, and so I'm trying to make it very clear that when I make this change, mostly just to have a conversation with you so that we're all tracking on the same, that the pond will be the 1.5 rainfall design, but it will be done consistent with the MPCA standards. So it'll be 1.5, and you'll have all the carbon and all the lining and everything that they recommend. Was that your intent by the change that you made?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, absolutely. The 1.5 in our mind is something that's fine, and it will be designed to that. One of the reasons why this language was brought up is as I was rereading some of the minutes from the advisory task force, there was a comment by an MPCA staff member that Mr. Sullivan brought about what typically the MPCA requires for stormwater ponds. And it's not always a liner. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, right? And so there will be MPCA requirements that we have to follow. And we were worried about in 1.5 would be fine. MPCA is not going to be concerned about over-designing for that capacity. but some of the other design factors, that was what that was intended to catch.
I think that addition was good, and I think it's a smart change, and so I totally agree with it. Scroll down to the bottom of page 2 there.
Language in 11B.
I
Would
am.
that, okay, great. Just trying to track.
Yep. And then on the insurance, the certificate should be provided to the commission too. So to Freeborn County and the commission. So I would assume that's not a problem.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's what we put when we said filing it. But of course.
Yeah, belt and suspenders there. The last one, and this is where I'll say to my fellow commissioners, scroll down to the changes to permit conditions 8.1 and 8.2. These are the pre-construction and pre-operational meetings. And we've had this discussion, so I want to make sure my fellow commissioners are very comfortable with this. This is not a tree program. These are serious elements to the permit, and we do make them adjustments, and we have our staff oversee these as they go forward. And the way Path Forward 1 was designed was that we would get input from the county or whoever wants to get input on these changes, okay? Path B says we're going to take care of that in the pre-construction, pre-operational part. It doesn't come back to the commission unless there's a complaint or our staff feels that the applicant has not met the condition and they want to clarify that. 99.9% of the time, Mr. Deere, they never come back because all these things get resolved at that level, but these are serious things. And so I was concerned in your language where I was trying to create a kind of a bifurcated system or a mixed up system where there was going to be comment on some of the language. But I think we can resolve that by doing what we've done on wind permits, where we've allowed the county environmental service folks in the meeting. They don't get a veto. They just are in the meeting, and they can whisper in, Mr. Harvo or Mr. Sullivan's ear saying, well, we don't think this is, and then they have to make the call, and it can come back to us, or they can file a complaint. So I think it's appropriate what we've done in several wind farms, and they've actually worked quite well having the county environmental services in the room at the pre-construction and pre-operational meetings. And they'll be able to oversee these documents and make sure that they're comfortable with them. And so my suggestion is to amend permit condition 8.1 and 8.2 just to inform and give all the documents to the county's environmental services. If the county environmental services want to show up or do anything, they can. They don't have to. It's just giving them the opportunity to do that. And I'll obviously ask the county, I think is available, and I'll ask them. But before I get to that, I want to make sure that the applicant is okay with this condition change. That makes me comfortable then taking out the comment period that we kind of threw into the permit phase, which I think was, I agree with you, a little bit cumbersome.
Mr. Deere.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, we appreciate that. First, I'll just say that one of our concerns about soliciting comments was, to our understanding, the last time a parent guarantee was provided was Enbridge Line 3, and I counted about 7 months of process to get that parent guarantee finalized and approved because it had comment and multiple considerations.
Oh, it was Enbridge.
Yeah.
Actually, there was one after that. We had the line from the Rainbow line from North Dakota. We had a parental guarantee in that one.
Fair
too.
enough. Wasn't aware of that. But we thought that, especially given how this permit condition talks about having a qualified risk assessment that's actually going to calculate what the risk is, and then we can work with staff like we always do on every other compliance filing to come up with something that's acceptable. Typically, we do see counties, townships, and anybody else who wants to show up, they're always invited to come to these pre-construction or pre-operation meetings. We can't make them come. Hopefully they do. There usually is pretty good dialogue, and things can get resolved at the table during these meetings. So as long as if they elect to not show up, it's not going to be a violation. I think that those changes to 8.1 and 8.2 are acceptable.
Yeah, and you're right. They're always welcome, but I think given the level of community interest and the fact that you had an ALJ recommending denial, I think having a clear statement that we intend and you intend to make sure that the county is involved and continue to be involved if they so choose, I think is an important statement to the public that this is not a rubber stamp. We're taking seriously what we're hearing, and we're making sure those conditions are met.
And Commissioner Tuma, can we just tweak that language slightly then to make that clear what you just said?
Sure.
That I don't know if our staff has an idea of how to do it, or we can work on it in a second, but essentially we want it to say that they'll participate with commission staff and invite Freeborn County Environmental Services to review or something, so that it's more clear that we're not waiting on a county environmental services to participate.
Right.
We'll come up with
some language if
something.
they so choose, or to level they choose, or something along that line. Emma, we can. And then, Madam Chair, just so we're clear in discussions, I think I honestly don't. I'm not all that wound up about the parental guarantee. Like I said, I don't know if I can go toe to toe with whoever's own experiment. But I think it's a good statement from the applicant. They're willing to do that, and they're willing to consider it. And I would probably move it, but I'm open to discussion on that one. I think starting the environmental fund and the decommissioning fund early, I think also is a good statement and an important aspect. I would think, as far as I'm concerned, going forward with BESS, I want to make sure that we have insurance language in the permits, and I also want to make sure we start the decommissioning fund and environmental protection fund right away. Like I said, they are not Xcel Energy. We've a lot of times delay these, and because of the different nature of this corporate structure, having a commitment and a plan starting from day one of operations. It doesn't mean they have to have all the money in there. It just means they have to have a clear plan of what it's going to be. And so I think given this circumstance, given the community interest in this, I think it's important that we do the modified applicants
11D,
the insurance one.
which, sorry, I'm just,
No, the fund one, which is 11E. I got it right, but I'm a dyslexic, so.
no, 11E as proposed by the applicant, but Mr. Deere earlier said you do support this overall, or you do not, Mr. Deere?
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, these were not 11D and 11E were two that we would prefer to not have as permit conditions. I think Mr. Rude would like to say a couple items about those two and some of the implications that these conditions could potentially have.
Yeah.
Rude.
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, I would like to, am I still muted here, a little closer, intimate with the microphone here. I guess I would like to talk a little bit more about why we have concerns with the parent guarantee component. As Commissioner Tuma pointed out, we are not Xcel, and we are not claiming that we have the financial wherewithal as Xcel or even Enbridge does. But parental guarantees, I think, shouldn't be seen as an indication that we're not willing to stand behind the commitments that we're making. But they do, in the way that we and almost every other project developer before you finances, particularly with tax equity and the way that debt is used to finance projects like this. Parental guarantees significantly complicate those financing transactions because they extend the project outside of the project's LLC box. And when we post things like insurance or bonds or security, we're able to contain the entire project within a a very defined container, which makes financing with debt and tax equity much more straightforward. And it is a one of these things looks like the others type of transaction. Using corporate guarantees is different. It's very uncommon for projects to have this. If as Mr. Deere pointed out, even in Minnesota, it's very uncommon for there to be parental guarantees. And I can tell you right now that while not impossible, it will make it much more difficult for us to finance this project.
How much additional cost or time will it add if the commission were to add this condition?
It's hard to pick a number, but I can tell you it'll add months. And I think it may not add a specific cost. It'll reduce the number of lenders that'll be willing to work with us to finance the project.
And can you speak more to the other financial assurances that are contained in what you have agreed to that, in your opinion, mitigate the need for a parental guarantee?
Yes. So first of all, as we point out in the application, the project is a $400 million plus investment, and that investment requires investors and lenders and tax equity investors, and those investors aren't just making that investment for fun, right? They're looking to get a return. They're looking to get their investment back. They're doing their diligence before they make that investment, and that investment has value. So I think as we pointed out, that the primary obligation is on the project company to fulfill its obligations under the permit. The protections after that, so I think you're already in a worst case scenario that the project company is not willing or able to fulfill its obligations. If there is an incident that requires that the project company is liable, you have insurance, and we're adding site conditions here that are above and beyond the typical conditions for us to share our insurance and produce insurance coverage documentation for not only traditional liability, but extended environmental liability and umbrella liability to further enhance the insurance that's available to cover whatever the project company may be liable for. And then on top of that, we are obligated to, and I think we're willing to take up Commissioner Tuma's request to, from day one, post additional bonding, which is a third-party surety product, either a bond or an LLC or a letter of credit. So a bank or other sort of investment grade institution is posting an instrument that can be drawn upon for an amount that is supported by a third-party document showing why that amount is sufficient to cover the potential worst case scenario. So I think the amount of things that would have to go wrong before a parent guarantee would even be used is the project company itself would have to not take action. The insurance would have to not be sufficient. And this security, this letter of credit or bond, would also have to not be sufficient before you would even get to the parent guarantee kicking in. And I think we think that those are all sufficient protections. They're above and beyond what our understanding is typical of projects in Minnesota. And I think we wanted to make sure it was clear that those will add significant burden to us as we try to move this project through financing and actually get it built.
So, Madam Chair, you actually answered the question I think that I was going to ask him, and I think that was what I heard from you. And it is the trade-off that I think is important to me, that the parental guarantee is far less than the financial assurance starting early. I think that's the statement that I want to hear, and I think I heard from you, but I don't want to make an assumption because that makes out of both of us, is that if we could do away with the parental guarantee, you're comfortable putting together an assurance package, some sort of surety bond or whatever we can develop starting from day one.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Mr. Deere.
Chair Siba and Commissioner Tuma, just one point of clarification we would like to make is that adoption of 11E is modified by Midwater. Just to make it clear that the decommissioning bond that would be required under a separate permit condition, that this would satisfy that.
Yes, that was the intent. So we're amending that language just to basically create it and call it an environmental fund, so it's available for that. runaway concern that the community has. They should know there is a level of funding, not only insurance, but there also is some money in an account someplace. Most of the time people build these facilities, the smaller ones, the counties, the permit and the solar facilities permit, and understand they're smaller. Typically they require the money up front in an account. Bridgewater Township has 4 solar gardens, and they did not get to start building until all the money was in an account for decommissioning. And so that's there also for environmental hazards that are created. So I don't think this is an unusual thing, but it is important, I think, here, a commitment. And so that makes me much more comfortable, Madam Chair. I do want to, I don't know if there's questions. I don't want to
Commissioner
stifle
Sullivan
questions because I do want to get some information from the counties too. So.
Yeah, and I think there are county officials here. I was looking online, but they are here, so we want to hear from them. But Commissioner Sullivan had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Sieben, and thank you, Commissioner Tuma, for that line of questions. That was helpful. I want to go to the EIS, or the environmental impact, and the environmental review, and I just have some basic questions that I need some answers for. I know this part of the state fairly well. I haven't actually walked the site like some of my colleagues like to do, but I know this area of the state pretty well. I live fairly close to it, and it's pretty flat. It's, like I'm not familiar exactly with this spot. I haven't walked this area, but, when water flows through flat areas, it doesn't take a lot of change in the geography for it to go in lots of different spots. And I'm a layman, so Mr. Sullivan, you can disagree with me. But what I'm concerned about when I just look at the map and I look at the flood map here from the briefing papers is that it looks like the project has picked like the one spot within here that you could do something. Like it just, to summarize the way I'm thinking about it, doesn't look like there's a lot of margin for error. Now, if you compare this to like the Sherco BESS that was approved, like there's pretty significant margin for error. I looked at this and I said, well, what if, there's a lot of private property involved here. What if a farmer builds a berm and changes things? And in effect, this flood pattern could shift. I mean, it could move around. And we're talking about 100-year floods, which even discounting the changes in the climate, this has a project life of 20 to 25 years. So we're looking at a probability that, it's a 20 to 25% probability that we're going to have a 100-year flood under normal conditions. And there's a lot of changes that could happen. And it just feels to me like there's not a lot of margin for error here. And so my question for you is like, how does the environmental review and how do the mitigations just impact that macro level thought that I just had right there? How are you addressing that, yeah, we recognize that there's not a lot of room for error in the spot that it's located here. If you're like, no, we think there is a lot of room for error, that I want to hear that too. But it feels to me, just looking at the map, having read what I've read, like it just doesn't, this is you kind of have to be exactly right to have mitigated the impacts of a flood or whatever. So,
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, I may defer to Mr. Sullivan a little bit on the EA and the analysis, but at least based upon these maps, it's even outside of the 500-year floodplain, right? There is more significant elevation change. I guess significant is all relative. Is it a Mississippi River bluff? No. But in some of the pictures that are in the record from the river looking up at the project, there is the project site, and particularly the trees, right, some of the screening, you can see a fairly significant elevation gain. This was a site that was used in the past for industrial uses. I believe it was a concrete plant or something, so a gravel mine and a concrete plant. And so it has been used for farming and other industrial uses in the past. And yeah, it is elevated.
How many feet from the river is it? Not just linear, but like how many feet?
We would have to look that up to see if we can find that in the documentation. And then on top of that, so the stormwater pond is going to be at the lowest point on the site, right? And the stormwater pond is also going to be out of the floodplain. And so some of the other factors that were outlined in the application and in the environmental review are these containers being fully enclosed and encapsulated, right? And so they are meant to contain and also to keep out. And so even if there were some unlikely event, they are containerized and fully sealed to where, in my mind, and I can be corrected by the experts, we wouldn't anticipate if there was this 1,000-year event or whatever it might be, that it would actually impact the facility.
I think this is a 100-year event, though.
On the key, it says 500-year floodplain as being one of the layers.
Yeah, I was looking at the 100-year part of that, though.
So I don't know where the 500-year floodplain lies in relation to that, but I do see across the river and to the southeast, there is some gray fringe around that edge, which is the 500 year. So it does look like that layer's on there, and so it's still outside of the 500-year floodplain.
Okay. Mr. Harbaugh.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan. Just to clarify, the 100-year floodplain in the map that's provided is the pink area. The topographic map that was provided in the briefing paper also shows that the elevation change from the base of the river being 1210 to a max of 1220, showing that it would be an elevation change of 10 feet.
10 feet. Mr. Sullivan, is there anything you wanted to add? That's, I guess, my question.
Commissioner Sieben and Commissioner Sullivan, there's really nothing at this point I would add in terms of the elevation conversation or the floodplain analysis. As part of the EA, I think we did consider that piece of land, recognizing that it is above the 100-year floodplain, and also looking at the engineering to manage different activities at the site. The engineering itself and the mitigation plans would address any concerns. So.
What happens if you know, and I'm asking, a hypothetical certainly, but it feels to me like we're dealing with a significant amount of private land down here, and this floodplain, I'm looking at south of the railroad tracks or just south of the railroad tracks here. Like, what if somebody were to what if they were to build a new road? I see there's, doesn't that change everything? Doesn't that, like the whole, like once the topography changes, it just, everything moves around. And I don't know, 12 feet doesn't seem like that could be that significant of a barrier. And again, I come back to this point of like, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of margin for error here. Mr. Deere.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, in my past experience as an environmental consultant, when somebody wants to build in the floodplain or floodway, they have to do a flood study to make sure that their project does not increase the elevation of the floodway.
Oh, so that it doesn't change it. So that is, okay, that's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. Mr. Deere, I think one of the things I would like for you to talk me through is how the containment works around the batteries. I think From my perspective, these are fairly new. You know, there are lots of battery storage projects across the country, but they are fairly new in Minnesota, and I think they are new for local governments and for community members. I think that they are unique in that they can be fully encapsulated in containers, as I understand it. I think that's a pretty unique feature of any energy resource we have right now. And because it's new, I think it would be helpful if you would talk us through how that works. Both, as I understand it, as a fire prevention measure and in a flooded situation, because I think in my mind, that piece of technology as a protection is pretty critical in how we think about this technology and where we put it and the risk we assess upon it. And so I think that that's a piece of it I'd like for you to just talk us through.
Chair Sieben and Commissioner Partridge, I'm going to ask Ms. Mates to talk through that technology.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Partridge. I think you're absolutely right in the statements that you made. Batteries think of them as nested systems. So the battery cells are encapsulated in kind of smaller metal containments. Those metal containments are put inside of drawers. And then there is a complete, the exterior of what looks like the storage container is the completely sealed container. And at the bottom of that container is a tray that's also sealed that can hold the entire contents of the coolant system that keeps the battery temperature moderated. So there's no opportunity for anything to leave the battery, and the batteries don't produce emissions. So the only thing that would have any potential for leakage is really related to that coolant, which the battery stores entire contents of coolant inside of the battery so that it can be pumped out if there is an issue with it. But even in that coolant system, there are multiple layers of protection to prevent it from getting to a state where that coolant, the entirety of the coolant would leak to the bottom of that battery container. And so within that, there are stoppers at each of those drawers that would modify a leak. And there's sensors that tell the battery operators that there's an issue. So we have an on-site technician that goes out to the site and deals with small issues so that they don't become a state in which there's an entire coolant leakage. And if there is, it's sealed within the battery. So Jeremy asked me to kind of talk through kind of how we would minimize a potential thermal event within the battery. Each of the batteries comes with a battery management system, and there are multiple layers of protection that help us identify issues in the first place. So really our first goal is prevention through gas sensors, through temperature sensors, and like smoke sensors. And so there's a sensory system that the battery management system monitors, and we have 24 hours a day monitoring for both the batteries and a separate monitoring company that helps us monitor specifically for fire incidents. And so then we have the technical component of it, and then we have the way that the battery is engineered in and of itself to be fully enclose a thermal event to prevent the spread of thermal runaway within the battery itself. And then that enclosure is also engineered to prevent the spread of a thermal event to an adjacent container. And so we have these multiple layers of protection that that the industry is employing through and is regulated by NFPA 855 to ensure that the batteries are safe, they're not leaking, there's no emissions, and that we're really implementing a technology that's an overall benefit to the grid.
Thank you. I think that was really helpful. I wanted exactly that explanation. I think that when we talk about new technologies, there are early models, there are early examples sometimes of where things go wrong, and sometimes there are types of batteries. In this case, you're using lithium ion phosphate. There are other types of batteries where we've seen a higher risk. And so I think it's really important that we talk publicly about the safety mechanisms, all of the different layers of protections, and the fact that these batteries are fully contained, each of them in multiple layers of containment facilities, I think really goes a long way in my mind to feeling comfortable with this technology. So I appreciate you talking me through the specifics.
And Commissioner Partridge, I just wanted to layer on to your point and point out that the judge's report in some cases cited the wrong technology of the batteries to contain heavy metals that could potentially, in the event of a thermal runaway event, impact the Shell Rock River. And that correction by the applicant and in the record, I think was really important for me to see that the analysis in the judge's report was based on different technology that is not planned to be used. So thanks for pointing that out. Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Stephen. So along the line of discussion, so I'll be more specific. So is there any national agency certifying this technology or any component of technology like a UL in our daily life electronics?
Thank you, Commissioner Hom. Yes, the National Fire Protection Association, which I referenced before as NFPA 855, has taken an active role in regulating battery energy storage systems, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years, to ensure that there is safe operation of batteries, safety for fire protection services and emergency workers. And in addition to your point, or to your question, I guess, UL Laboratories does require, or National Fire Protection Association requires that UL Laboratories test the batteries, and the factories are also in a position of making sure that batteries are sealed. We have to undergo testing of the battery models. All of the battery manufacturers have to do factory testing related to thermal events to ensure that they operate properly. I think, overall, this regulatory system is set up and has become very robust to ensure that we are operating systems safely. And in addition to, and I just want to give you the specific UL standard, which is UL 9540A, is what that regulatory item is for that issue.
Thank you. So whatever you state today is not just your claim and statement. I think it is based on the engineering certification process. You will procure your component based on that certification.
Absolutely.
Okay. Under that discussion, so we discussed about this insurance. I think I was struggling about assessing the risk and overall, but who's better than insurance company assessing this risk? So do you think there'll be an underwriter who can underwrite this insurance? And is it common in this industry?
I'm going to let Peter take this one.
Yes, I mean, we have procured insurance for all of our projects to date. We operate currently 350 megawatts of battery projects in Texas, including projects that are very close to the Gulf Coast. So we're getting not only the same insurance we'd be getting here in Minnesota, but also windstorm and hurricane insurance and much more robust flooding insurance for those projects. And we are able to get insurance for these projects. And in fact, I've been building and working on batteries for over a decade, including some batteries here in Minnesota. I was involved in the wind project with Xcel's, kind of some Xcel pilot projects in southern Minnesota years ago. What's that?
That's not helping you.
Well, I was involved.
No,
I was
okay.
involved
We're
in the
joking.
wind project that hosted it. That
You're bringing back bad memories is all.
yeah, these are better. They're not as hot. But over the years, insurance for batteries has actually gotten substantially cheaper on a pro rata basis because of all of these new standards and because of the testing that's gone on. And so insurance companies are actually much more comfortable insuring these because when they do their maximum probable loss analysis, which is how they determine what their exposure is, those, even for large projects, those MPLs have gone down substantially because of the way, as Mary explained, the projects are really sectionalized now. So even if there is a catastrophic event, that's not a project level catastrophic event. It's limited to one section of the project. So their exposure as they see it is much lower. And so we use an insurance broker called Alliant, and they provide us with corporate level programmatic insurance. So we procure insurance at a large level, and then they provide project level insurance. And like almost every other large project level, they then diversify out that risk to smaller entities.
Yeah, along that line, if there is underwriter, that means they can quantify this risk. And then also, if your risk is too high, they will charge you a lot. I think everybody knows that if there is your own risk, it'll increase your premium. But also, if industry has that risk, it'll also increase the premium because insurance, by definition, they are diversifying their risk by underwriting many different similar products. So it will show up in your insurance premium, but you are comfortable paying for that insurance premium in this case, right?
Yes, and because we debt finance these projects, we're required by our lenders, just like your mortgage company requires your house to full insure it for the full replacement value and then some, as well as full liability insurance. So yes, in all of our economic models, we fully bake in the insurance and some contingency for future insurance cost increases. So yes, we believe the insurance cost for these projects will be reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if whoever's going to represent the county, if they could come forward and introduce themselves. I got a couple questions for you. They certainly are welcome to come up too, yeah. I wasn't going to make Shell Rock Township do anything, but if they want to give us their thoughts, I'm wide open to it.
Hi, I'm Dawn Casa. I am District 2 County Commissioner for Freeborn County. Would you like me to do it again? Okay. My name is Dawn Casa. I'm the District 2 Freeborn County Commissioner.
I'm Tim Casa, Shell Rock Township Officer. Maybe. We're small.
Yeah, Ms. Casa, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your, Commissioner, yes, Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for participating. This is not your first time in front of us. We've been down this road for a while. Okay, I appreciate your participation in the advisory council. I would have wished that the applicant would have talked to Glenville and figured out a better location. I agree with you. This is a challenging one, as Commissioner Sullivan is struggling with it. It is a challenge, but they made the permit. This landowner has a right to do with his land as he chooses within limits, obviously. You as a commissioner know that. I mean, that's part of your job, is to balance those community interests and all everything out. in that aspect. I would have loved it. It would have been right next to the wastewater treatment facility, but obviously that didn't happen, and that's just what it is. I mean, that's
Still for sale.
yeah, you know, and those are issues that probably this would have been a lot smoother had they talked to the town, the city, and the city was open. But I don't know what happened. I have to deal with the permit that is in front of me and the information that's in front of me. And I agree with the assessment that I think there is a path forward, but I also want to make sure that the county is comfortable and the county is willing to participate. Part of that comfort level is the county being in these pre-construction meetings and the pre-operational meetings, reviewing the documents, working with Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Harvo to make sure that all these protections are in place, which are very normal for us to do. They are a little higher than what we have done for other BESSes, significantly higher. And so we're trying to make sure that we are looking at the conditions for this particular piece of property at this particular location for the concerns raised by the public. And so I've laid out conditions with regards to, insurance. There's obviously discussions about parental guarantee. To be honest with you, I don't think it's worth all that much. But the insurance and the commitment to start funding the decommissioning / environmental fund early, along with the advisory task force level of stormwater, makes me comfortable. But it's also the comfort that I want to make sure I hear from you on what your comfort level is, and also whether the county is willing to make sure their environmental services participates. It's up to you whether they do or not. But that's obviously, you're one commissioner, I'm one commissioner, I got 5 others here. Your administrator would have to make those calls. But so I'm trying to respond to the concerns that you've laid out. I actually used your draft site permit language for your ordinances as templates to work from for these conditions that the applicant is now willing to agree to and make sure is in the permit. So here's your chance to let us know what you're thinking.
Okay. Should I read my statement first?
You can do whatever you want. I just wanted to make sure you understood kind of where I'm coming from.
I do understand, sir. I thank you, commissioners, for allowing me one final opportunity to speak on behalf of my constituents in the Glenville area. We stand here today with the very same concerns we have had since this process began. Our concerns have never changed. They are about our elderly residents, our school located nearby, and most importantly, our river, our environment, and the aquifer that sustains our communities. At no point has Spearmint convinced us that they have done everything possible to ensure this is a safe location. At no point have they accepted clear responsibility should contamination occur to the river or surrounding wells. Instead, we have heard statements like it's just antifreeze and it will dissipate. I don't know what everyone else has been taught over the years, but I always was taught to keep my farm animals and pets away from antifreeze, to call poison control immediately if a child ingests it, that it's highly toxic. If it is dangerous to children and animals, it is certainly dangerous to the fish, wildlife, and habitat that depend on our river. From the perspective of my constituents, what they have seen is advertising in our county fair magazine and donations to local organizations. Rather than building trust, it has left many feeling as though Spearmint is trying to buy goodwill and silence opposition, instead of addressing the legitimate concerns of the people who live here. I sincerely appreciate the Commission allowing a task force to be formed. During that process, numerous alternative sites were presented. Every one of them was dismissed because they were more than a mile away and therefore not considered. Yet those locations would have significantly reduced the risk and met with far less opposition. Last year, Commissioner Tuma told me that I could not simply say no. He said we needed to accept this technology was coming and help identify a better location. We did exactly that. We have never opposed this technology. We oppose this location. Commissioner Tuma himself even suggested they look at the ethanol plant area or the Alberta water treatment plant site, which there is land available to purchase right by it. We offered alternative sites throughout our county that would have been far safer. Those alternatives were rejected. The only reasons we continue to hear are that Spearmint was not required
to evaluate alternative locations and that they have already invested too much money in this site. But I ask you, is that the responsibility of our communities? Why should a company headquartered in Florida be allowed to come into southern Minnesota and place our river, our natural resources, our residents, and our schools at risk solely because changing location would cost them more money? The people I represent depend on government to protect their water and natural resources. They trust you to look out for their interests, not the interests of a private company. They should not bear the consequences of a company's business decision. As this commission recognized last year, this is new technology for Minnesota. We are simply asking that these facilities be located where the risks are minimized now and in the future. Let companies establish a proven safety record in Minnesota before placing projects this close to one of our rivers. Please do not allow this facility to be built only 150 feet from the Shell Rock River. We don't have expensive attorneys or teams of consultants. We have each other, and we have faith that the Public Utility Commission and our elected leaders will protect the environment we all depend on. Recently, I attended our agricultural luncheon where Dr. Burke from the Minnesota Corn Growers Association reminded us that our water supply is our most valuable resource and that protecting it for future generations must remain our highest priority. Mr. Martinson from the Association of Minnesota Counties has told me we need to sound the alarm on protecting our water supply. Electrical engineers have told me this is a poor location. Freeborn County passed a resolution opposing this location. Shell Rock Township passed a resolution opposing this location. Across the state line, the city of Northwood, Iowa, the first community downstream that would be affected, submitted a resolution opposing this site. Butler County, Iowa, where families camp, fish, and recreate along this river, also passed a resolution in opposition. Ruth Salisbury, a Clarksville, Iowa council member, drove all the way to our first public meeting to speak against this proposal because her community treasures the river, and that area has been featured by National Geographic as a beautiful recreational destination. Every one of these communities is saying the same thing: protect the river. Mr. Lee, a past commissioner and currently serving on our Shell Rock River Watershed Board, has pointed out that our county and watershed have already spent approximately $30 million in cleanup efforts to ensure the river is a beautiful recreational benefit, and it is a designated state water trail. No one has told me this is an appropriate location except Spearmint. In its most recent filing, the applicant argued that the administrative law judge overstated the risks. I would ask, what scientific modeling or guarantees support that claim? Because on page 21 of the same filing, Spearmint argues against providing a financial bond to protect our communities should an accident occur. In other words, they are asking you to accept their assurances while resisting financial responsibility if those assurances prove wrong. As a county commissioner responsible for protecting the financial well-being of our taxpayers, I find that deeply concerning. I do not want an out-of-state company to come here, experience an incident, and then leave Freeborn County taxpayers responsible for cleaning it up. Please don't tell us that that could never happen, as every day we drive past the empty farmland industry site, a reminder of the devastating fire in 2001 that ultimately cost millions to clean up after the company walked away. No bond, no protection. Our county cannot afford to repeat that history. Also, we cannot find a study anywhere that will guarantee the 24/7 noise pollution and vibration from this unit will not cause harm to humans, wildlife, or pollinators. We find that concerning. It was brought up by Commissioner Ekstrom at the last meeting. This should be investigated, with the location being so close to town, our river, as well as CRP and DNR land. Finally, the applicant argues that this commission should approve this permit because you approved the Sherco project. I respectfully but strongly disagree. Sherco is fundamentally different. Sherco will be located approximately 1,100 feet from the water, not 150. Sherco is being built by Xcel Energy, a Minnesota-based company founded in 1909, headquartered in Minneapolis with more than a century of service to this state. It serves Minnesota and neighboring states, employs over 11,000 people, and has the financial strength and long-term commitment to assume the risks associated with a project of this size. Minnesota is its home. Spearmint is not comparable. Spearmint was founded in 2022 and is headquartered in Miami, Florida. It is a much smaller company with a limited operating history, relatively few employees, and only a handful of projects. It has no established track record that gives my constituents confidence that the safety of our community has been its highest priority. Most importantly, Spearmint has no long-term investment in Minnesota or in the future of our small rural communities. Commissioners, this decision is about more than one permit. It is about protecting the people who entrusted us with their future. It is about protecting a river that belongs to all of us. It is about protecting an aquifer that future generations will depend upon long after all of us are gone. My hope and my prayer today are that you follow the recommendation of the administrative law judge and deny this permit. Do it for the people. Do it for the river. Do it for the generations who will inherit the decisions we make today. Thank you again for giving me one final opportunity to speak on behalf of the people of Glenville and Shell Rock Township. And sir, I'd just like to point out one thing that while you were talking. If our water supply is contaminated, we all know how long it takes to get an insurance claim or litigate. That would cause, we have 29 wells in the 1.5 mile circumference, plus the city of Glenville's water supply. That becomes a health emergency. People need clean water tomorrow, their livestock, their children. They have said this is going to be monitored. At our last public meeting, they told us they would have a response time of 4 hours. That's going to put a huge burden on our emergency management. Also, we have a 17-member volunteer fire department. During the weekdays when everyone is working, there's a maximum of 7 firemen who could respond to a daytime fire. So those are our concerns, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Just so I'm tracking, you did have a proposed ordinance for BESSes in your county. Was that adopted?
It has not been as of yet, sir. The Planning and Zoning Committee is still working on it, but I believe they have written in there that they don't want it more than 300 feet from a water.
Certainly. But right now, you don't have any permit restrictions for this property that I could find in the record.
We'd have to check with Trevor, our Planning and Zoning.
And then I did ask a question, but I don't know what the level of desire for the county to participate. I understand that what you want to have happen is a denial, but if we do approve it, we would hope that the county, environmental services, would be willing to it. And I know you're just one commissioner, so you can't commit to that, but your administrator, I don't know if they're here or.
She's on. Our administrator was going to listen in. I don't know if she can.
There's listening in and there's participating, so.
From a township perspective, I would encourage the administrator that if this is passed, which we hope it doesn't, of course, but that they would participate at that level. Yes, for the environmental services,
And that's what we'd hope. And I hear what you're saying. I have to make a decision on this property. I believe, honestly, that there is a better property in this area. And I hate to tell you this, more than likely, there'll probably be a BESS there someday in the future too. This is a technology in an area where it is economically advisable to do that. And it wouldn't surprise me that you won't see more BESSes in your neighborhood. So that I have to look at this property and this property only. You have a property owner who has a right to do with this property as he so chooses within the parameters of the law. And so I have to deal with the contract they have with a particular landowner to do that. I would have loved to have it over by the wastewater treatment facility. That would have made more sense to me. But guess what? I'm not the mayor of Glenville. I'm not the council of Glenville. I am not that landowner, and I'm not, other people that would have to permit and make decisions on that site. That just because that's my preference is kind of irrelevant. Okay. My hope was that maybe something would materialize. That's why I wanted to have the conversation. I appreciate the applicant having those conversations, but they probably have a contract with a landowner they probably can't get out of without significant financial obligations that they would lose.
They always claimed that their restriction had to be within 1 mile because 3 miles was going to be too expensive, but they failed to tell you that they're going to pad in every mile of line is not the same cost because they put all of their engineering into
All of that is interesting, Commissioner. Very interesting information. But I have this permit, this line, this location. Some challenges to it, and we're trying to put conditions in place to make that. It's not going to be a no risk. There's nobody who has any property owner along that river is a risk to that river. We just want to make sure this one is as much as possible a lack of a risk. I think our conditions for fire safety are strong. Okay, we've implemented them, and applicants have been good working with the fire safety folks, first responders, to make sure that we are prepared to deal with this, because you don't just show up and start spraying water on this thing. There has to be a plan to deal with it, and this applicant and other permits and also other applicants have been very good about that. So I'm not too worried about fire safety. It's pretty good. These other conditions are important. I mean, I'm hoping I'm responding to your permit your permit language for your ordinance by putting the insurance requirements in there, and also their willingness to start funding the decommissioning early on. So I'm responding to what was in the advisory task force that was proposed, but not yet adopted by the county. So I appreciate that. That was very helpful for me, but we got to make a decision on this property. I don't know where my fellow commissioners are at. We'll have that conversation, but your input has been of value to us, and it has made this permit and our future process of permits better. I actually think the insurance language should be an ongoing, whether it's Xcel or anybody, should be in our permits, and that's something that was helpful, and that was your county folks putting that forward, and was helpful to us. So
one of the issues that I have, and I'm a 21-year fire guy, recommendation is to get out there and make sure the scene is safe. Wait. You watch these things burn if they would go to a thermal runaway, and you're going to wait for their response team to get there. And that's that 4-hour window we were told at the last meeting would be coming out of Minneapolis down there. There's things that they can do, of course, if something is blowing and going, but it's wait.
Well, and that's something that they need to work out with the fire chiefs in the area. And so if it's not acceptable, I expect Mr. Harvo and Mr. Sullivan to let us know that they're your fire chiefs, your experts that you've hired for your area, are not happy with it. And if they're not happy with it, I can tell you, I know this commission, they're not going to be happy with it. And I know Mr. Harvo and Mr. Sullivan are going to make us aware of that. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I would have concerns about that, but I'm going to lean on those experts. When you develop a plan, and I want to hear from you folks, when you develop a plan, that plan is going to be approved and going to be worked out with the local fire chiefs, the guys who are actually showing up and putting their life at risk. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
I would also.
Sorry, Commissioner Tuma, are you done with this round of questions? Because I think there are also folks in the audience who wanted to quickly address the commission on the overall direction the commission may be headed on this project. Mr. Kajewski submitted comments into the record on this, or Nate Runke, and I see them both in the audience. If they wanted to say anything, Mr. Kajewski, I think we're done with your comments, but thank you very much for being here and for your participation. Sir, welcome. Please state your name and provide the comments you would like to at this time.
Thank you, Chair Sieben and Commission members, Commissioners. The Northern Midwest Regional Council of Carpenters is in strong support of permitting this project, and we're in opposition of the Administrative Law Judge's recommendation not to permit. Our council represents skilled union carpenters across the region who are committed to building safe, reliable, and high-quality energy infrastructure. The Midwater BESS project represents a critical investment in Minnesota's energy future and one that will enhance grid reliability, support the integration of renewable energy resources, and create family-sustaining union jobs for our members in and around the community. Our council respectfully disagrees with the ALJ recommendations not to permit this project. The record demonstrates that Midwater BESS and the project meets the statutory and regulatory standards and is consistent with the public interest. Energy storage is an essential component of modern, robust electric grid, and this project will provide measurable benefits to ratepayers and the broader Minnesota economy. Denying the permitting for this project will eliminate significant economic opportunities for Minnesota workers and delay the important progress forward for more reliable and sustainable energy systems. Let me also state that in addition to rejecting the ALJ's recommendation not to permit the project, we do support adopting the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law to the extent that they support permitting. And number 3, issue an order granting the necessary permits for the Midwater BESS project. After reviewing some of the documents, I think the project met the statutory siting criteria. Their direct testimony and filings emphasize that this facility and transmission line satisfy the site and route permit under Minnesota statute. Second, the safety and emergency response. There's been quite a bit of testimony today. Midwater has highlighted the compliance with NFPA. They reiterated that today, and other safety codes, 24/7 monitoring, and a detailed emergency response plan. Third, the economic and workforce benefits. Their filings and public comments note construction and long-term operational benefits, including local hiring opportunities and tax revenue, aligning with labor interests in high-quality middle-class jobs. And finally, the grid reliability and public interest. Midwater emphasizes that the 150 megawatt BESS will enhance the regional grid reliability and support renewable integration. And so denying those permits in this case would simply be inconsistent with the record, since this project has demonstrated compliance in those areas. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Kajewski. And Mr. Runke, if you wanted to add anything, please state your name and the organization you're representing.
Hi, I'm Nathan Runke on behalf of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 49. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I think Richard did a good job of conveying kind of our same thoughts on this project. I guess the only thing I would add is our concern with treating any projects. I understand it's a new technology, but treating them outside of how we would treat all of the other energy production or storage. I guess this is the only storage. So, but we just don't want to see site permit conditions that feel like they're already being met, kind of added on after the fact, and keeping good projects from going forward. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot extra here, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you want to take a short break, or are we ready to move into deliberations?
I could make a motion if you need a break after that to talk to staff. I'd be happy to do that, but I think I'm ready.
Okay.
5 minutes then.
Yeah. Then we'll take a short break after that, Commissioner Tuma.
Excellent. So I am at
Working
this,
off of
my decision options and also the applicant's filing. Okay, I am comfortable with my path B, and I'm more comfortable after listening to the discussion today. So that would be Tuma decision option revised 1, 2B from the staff briefing papers, 3 and 4, 7, which is determining that the environmental assessment was adequate. Tuma revised 10, which is issuing a site permit for the BESS with the modifications. Then Tuma revised 11, but that's revised to be P1 through P8, and then P10 through P20. And then the applicant's filing language for 11B with the adjustment by taking out the words "to the extent" and replacing it with "that is."
We might have to, can we see that? Or, sorry, I'm looking at your path B, but it might be easier if I would look at their revised language.
Yes, that would
Okay,
be-
got it.
that's-
Then never mind, Ms. Fazio.
Ms. Fazio, I think, has that language. So I'll wait for that.
Bless you.
Gesundheit. I can't imagine why you're sneezing. I mean, you know, the air's been so clear lately.
So, sorry, Commissioner Tuma, on now that this is up,
11B, so that would be the change that Ms. Fazio has in purple there, deleting "to the extent" and replacing with "that is."
Mm-hmm.
And then scroll down on the 11C. This is the insurance language, just making it sure that they're providing both Freeborn and the commission with the filing, but it's filed, so Mr. Deere is correct, but we're just belts and suspenders. Then I would move 11E, which is the decommissioning fund starting right away, and not move
wait, you're moving Tuma new 11E or the new amended?
11E as proposed by the applicant. And then I have the changes to the permit at 8.1 and 8.2 of the site permit, and 9.1 and 9.2 of the route permit, where we would invite the environmental service of Freeborn County to participate in the pre-construction and pre-operation meetings if they choose. And then I think there are two other ones that we need to adopt on Path B, and that is decision options 13 and 14, which are the route permits.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. For clarification, Commissioner Tuma, the permit language 8.2 is a bit different from the what originally STEP has. Your intent is only including Freeborn County there, right? Because the Department of Commerce is still there in your language. So I think STEP language strike out that out.
Staff struck that out in there.
So that's why there is something.
Part of the P's that are there.
So your intent is agreeing with the STEP on that one. Okay, thank you.
So that would be struck.
That's still struck. That's struck as one of the P, I think one of the P languages that we adopted earlier in 11A.
And then Commissioner Tuma, what did you do on the parental guarantee?
I did not move it.
You didn't move that, just to be clear. And does that, your motion also includes all of the recommendations that EIP staff made in
Yes,
here?
that is part of the motions.
And
so that's to be.
Okay, perfect. And then to the applicant, is there anything in that you wanted to say about Commissioner Tuma's motion that's not clear that we talked about earlier?
Chair Sieben, commissioners know that the motion as outlined by Commissioner Tuma is acceptable to the applicant.
Okay. So anybody else have anything before we take a 5-minute break? Okay, the commission stands in recess until 11:48 a.m. Okay, the commission will come back from its recess. And Mr. Sullivan, before we move to deliberations, you wanted to clarify something.
Chair Sieben and Commissioners, if I could offer up, if you're amenable to making an additional revision of the permit, we just talked about including the environmental services as part of the pre-con and pre-op meetings. I'd like to add, if possible, the Freeborn County Emergency Management Services representative, as well as the Glenville Fire Department and the Albert Lee Fire Department. Those would be the primary responders in the event that something would happen, and it would be helpful to have their input and any opportunity for them to maybe offer up some site-specific considerations at those events. So I think it would be helpful, something to consider.
Totally.
That just like came to mind on the break, or based on the discussion that happened, I'm just trying to clarify why this is coming up now.
Sure.
So just
Yep, absolutely.
maybe it was from what the county commissioner said, that would be helpful. And if you could just step through where it is again in the permit that you're adding their input.
Absolutely. Chair Sieben, this offer came up through hearing the testimony from the Freeborn County Commissioner, Commissioner Keza, in recognition that the EMS and the fire departments were actually part of the task force as well, and certainly expressed interest in being part of and continuing this effort with managing the site. So that's
With
really
managing the site, but in the actual permit language,
Right.
they're being inserted to do what?
included in those pre-construction and pre-operation meetings.
As
As
listening
Right, as invitees, right.
and invitees. And so, Ms. Fazio, do you know where that section is? And
And it would, Mr. Sullivan, it would just be 8.1 and 8.2. I don't think they need to participate in the transmission line one. I would assume it's mostly the site, the best site that we're worried about.
we're going to take another recess. Sorry.
So I just want to make sure I was tracking with what he was suggesting.
I know, but we're going to take a recess, and I'm just going to try to be more comfortable with what's being proposed. So the commission stands in recess. Okay, the commission will come back from its recess, and I think a more appropriate way to do this is to then show the language to everyone and make sure everyone's comfortable with it, including our staff and the commissioners. So Commissioner Tuma, do you want to explain what the
I think this is what
language
Mr.
is?
Sullivan was recommending, was to just make sure that at the pre-construction meeting, if they want to participate, the emergency service folks could participate as it relates to the site permit. Mr. Deere, I know you have to consult with them and develop a emergency plan that has to be brought to the pre-construction meeting and the pre-operational meetings. That's going to happen, but they're not necessarily invited to participate. So if the question is, are you okay with them being invited to participate in the meeting?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, absolutely not. As you indicated, 8.11 requires the applicant to coordinate with them in advance and file documentation of any comments that they have. Participation in the meeting, and in my experience, anybody who wants to come has typically been invited. It's no problem to invite them.
Yeah. So it's, again, belts and suspenders as far as I'm concerned. So
just listing, I can't see what county folks are added here. Ms. Fazio, if someone can, or if you can read who is included.
Sorry, Chair Sieben.
Or
Is it not working?
Mr. Sullivan can read who he wanted included again.
Commissioner Sieben, the addition of the Freeborn County Emergency Management Services and also the Albert Lee Fire Department and the Glenville Fire Department.
Okay. So then, Commissioner Tuma, you're comfortable with that, and it's in here, and the applicant's comfortable with that. So is there any other discussion on Commissioner Tuma's overall motion? Commissioner Sullivan.
I just wanted to say thank you, Commissioner Tuma, for the work that you've put in on this. I appreciate it. I started the conversation here, when I came to this and after reviewing the materials, I was kind of a little skeptical. I was worried, as my questions indicated earlier, that I didn't think there was a lot of room for error here. And but I think that the work that you've done has gotten me comfortable with it. I appreciate the parties. I appreciate the applicant, the work that you've done, and moving to where Commissioner Tuma was. Also appreciate the county being here and the township being here. One other thing, in looking at this, I think that this is, it's a private party. They have a right to do with the land as they want. What you mentioned before, that this has been cited for other this has been used in other industrial uses in the past. That comforts me that, these are kind of working lands. And, some of the neighbors to this property that I think are important mentioning is, you have a substation that is like literally right there. And then up the block, you have an anhydrous ammonia facility that's just right up the block, which, is, it's not out of character with it, at least what I see in the record. So I just wanted to mention that I appreciate all the work that you've done.
Yeah, that's a good point, Madam Chair and Commissioner Sullivan. I started very skeptical too, and seeing the site, I wanted to make sure we were doing our due diligence here, and I appreciate the applicant. I think the applicant did a lot of work, extra work. I sent you out to do extra work, and you did it. It maybe not came to the fruition that maybe some of the people in the community would like, but I think it was a good conversation to be had. I think the community as a whole is better off for that conversation going forward. I don't think this is going to be the only BESS in that neighborhood. I think there will be other substations too in the area. There's other opportunities for BESSes, and so the fact that Freeborn County is thinking about this, I think is good. There's a lot of other things along this river that I'm far more worried about than this site as far as polluting the Shell Rock River. And so I think you've done your due diligence to know that this is financed in a way that your financiers aren't going to let you get away with anything. They don't want to be left with a project that fails and is not fully insured. So I'm comfortable when you put the insurance in here. I'm comfortable with the willingness of the applicant to start the environmental decommissioning fund right away. That definitely got me comfortable, and the willingness to do up and above on the on the stormwater facility. I think it puts us in a good position. I think those are the kind of mitigations that when the ALJ said, we need to take this seriously, we are taking it seriously. The applicant has taken this seriously. And so I appreciate the hard work that the applicant has put into this. This is a little challenging, but I think it's going to make our processes better going forward. So I appreciate all the back and forth that has gone on here, Madam Chair, and I think it's definitely a permittable site.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Tuma, and EIP and all of the parties that have made it a better project than when it was proposed. And certainly, I think the applicant has shown a willingness to make accommodations to the project and modifications that make it fit with that will fit well within Minnesota's energy system. Mr. Deere, can you just update us on briefly, sorry, I should have asked this before, when construction is likely to begin? Is it the second quarter of 2027? Is that?
Chair Sieben, I'm going to defer to Ms. Mates to answer that question.
Thank you, Commissioner Sieben. Chair Sieben, the schedule is a little bit of a moving target. We currently can only go by what MISO publishes for their interconnection. So our schedule is driven by our interconnection agreement with MISO, which we submitted in 2022. So we're currently looking at a start of construction potentially in Q1 of 2028. So that would be the first part of 2028. What we're seeing as a trend is that schedule is getting pushed further out as MISO is not completing their studies.
On days like today, it's really tough. Okay, Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chelsea. But thanks for the flagging it. I think Commissioner Sullivan and I mentioned that on Tuesday during the MISO quarterly update meeting to MISO. Yes, their expedite resource adequacy study is pushing away this kind of good project, which can deliver reliability for all the customers, not specific customers. And so I think that's, at least I and Commissioner Sullivan's standing position that, yes, it has to be just and fair to everybody standing in the line. So we are keep telling them. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, on Commissioner Tuma's motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you very much, everyone, for all your work, and to our staff as well. Okay, the next, if staff and parties for the next item could please come forward. Don't we have another item?
Yeah.
Where'd everyone go?
They're coming.
Oh, it said not before 12:30. Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's right.
So the commission is in recess until 12:30. We stand in recess. Mr. Manning, good afternoon. Please introduce agenda item number 4.
Good afternoon, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Today's fourth agenda item is docket number E002/GR21630 in the matter of the application of Northern States Power Company doing business as Xcel Energy for authority to increase rates for electric service in the state of Minnesota. Also noticed was docket number G002/GR23413 in the matter of the application of Northern States Power Company for authority to increase rates for gas service in the state of Minnesota. This docket was last before the Commission on March 12th, 2026. The questions before the Commission today are, following the Court of Appeals remand, how should the Commission resolve Xcel's request to include a rate base the amount claimed as a prepaid pension asset and earn a return of the Commission authorized weighted average cost of capital, and should the prepaid pension asset be recovered through rate base or by another method? And if so, how much of Xcel's claimed prepaid pension asset should be included in rate base and at what return? Since briefing papers were filed, the Department of Commerce filed a correction to the briefing papers. On page 16, in the first paragraph of the summary of the Department of Commerce comments, Xcel is identified as the trustee of the pension plan. The department noted that the current trustee is Principal Financial Group. Parties and staff are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. We'll begin with Commissioner comments or questions. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Sieben. I have a question for Ms. Lee and the large industrial users.
Good afternoon, Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, Amber Lee, on behalf of the XLI.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. My question is I'm wondering if you could share with us XLI's view on whether or not the utility has shown that these that this is entirely shareholder funded within the prepaid pension asset. And I'm just wondering if you could share with us your view on that.
Certainly, Commissioner Sullivan. It's XLI's view that Xcel has not demonstrated in the record a proper accounting of the pension expense so that we can determine the shareholder contributions, and therefore we don't believe any return is appropriate.
Thank you. That's my thinking on this as well. And, you know, we discussed this at length a couple weeks ago in the rate case, and my position really hasn't changed since then. And I do think that the Court of Appeals has shown us a way for the company to recover, but I don't see that that the company has met their burden to show us what is, excuse me, I'm having the air today is, my asthma is struggling with it, sorry. But I don't think that the company has shown us, what is shareholder funded and what is not. So if the company wants to come forward and speak to that, I'd be happy to hear from them and give you a last opportunity before I make my motion.
Please state your name and the organization you're representing, Ms. Brahma and Mr. Dobson.
Thank you, Chair Sieben, Commissioners. Elizabeth Brahma with the Taft Law Firm here on behalf of Xcel Energy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Ian Dobson with Xcel Energy.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Sullivan. I understand XLI's position in this proceeding, but the overwhelming evidence is that this is entirely a shareholder-funded asset, and there are multiple ways that we know that. First of all, the company witness with Richard Schruby, who is responsible for this plan, not only discussed this fact, but included calculations, bank statements, and a reconciliation showing how the prepaid pension rolled forward. The bank statements show employer contributions going back to the beginning of the prepaid pension asset and show also the expense and how the prepaid pension asset is calculated to reach the conclusion that it can only be shareholder funded. This conclusion is also supported by the company's auditors and actuaries, as this prepaid pension asset is reflected in the company's 10K. And these folks, their licenses are on the line if they were to allow the company to show a prepaid pension asset when one did not exist in these financial statements. Additionally, by definition, we know what the prepaid pension asset is, its contributions in excess of expense, and the company's expense is tracked in rates in every rate case, and the Commission knows what is in the cost of service in every rate case because the company provides extensive data about that. And so we know every component of the cost of service in each rate case, and that it does not include contributions. And the Commission has found as much in the past. In the 2013 case, the Commission explicitly found that these were shareholder contributions creating the prepaid pension asset, which was explicitly permitted in rate base at that time. So at the end of the day, there is nothing to point to suggest that contributions are coming from customers, because the simple calculation of the prepaid pension asset as cumulative contributions minus cumulative expense is adequately and demonstrated and in depth throughout the company's filings in this proceeding and in the underlying cases as well.
So from the company's perspective, then everything's been addressed, problem solved.
That is our point of view, yes, that this is a real asset, that the company's shareholders have contributed funds, and by doing so don't have the opportunity to invest those funds elsewhere, and as a result they're entitled to a return on the asset.
I see Ms. Campbell is on. Ms. Campbell, or is that somebody from the company, or I mean from the department, want to weigh in on this? Mr. Dornfeld is here.
Welcome. Mr. Dornfeld, please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Sieben, Commissioners. Richard Dornfeld appearing today on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Joined today by Ms. Campbell from the department. The Court of Appeals directed the Commission to give due consideration to the net cumulative difference between pension expense and pension trust contributions as an asset of capital nature. The department looked at this thoroughly, in close consultation with our consultant, and pursued every sort of viable argument that we thought that would be in the best interest of ratepayers. We think there are some grounds to dispute that the asset is fully funded by shareholders given the interactions with market. The differences between sort of actuarial and market assumptions and then what actually occurs can affect the size of the asset indirectly. But we ultimately didn't think that was a productive ground as a primary basis for our position.
Isn't the trust right now is underfunded too, isn't it?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan. So I think it's really important, and it's easy to mix the two. The funded status of the pension is not a question of whether there is an asset or liability. The funded status is about a potential goal or target for the future for funding. It's not about the dollars contributed. It's not a current asset or liability. It's a long-term target that's reassessed every year about what the benefit obligations might be. That is a very different thing than the real cash and stock contributions that have cumulatively been contributed to the pension fund. The issue in part with suggesting that the future obligation, which at this point is not set, it's just a reporting informational thing in the financial statements, is that it's almost saying because you are trying to work toward this goal by funding the pension asset, but aren't there yet, which the law doesn't require you to be fully funded at this time, then we're going to not give you a return because you're not all the way there yet. But what that does is disincentivize, to the extent there's a possibility to do that independent of the mandatory contributions, disincentivizes the utility from making these contributions and effectively penalizes them for having made them in the past.
Okay. Ms. Campbell, I see your camera is on. Is there anything that you want to add or can add?
Yes, thank you. Nancy Campbell for the Department of Commerce. I have kind of summary of 5 things that I'd like to just point out. I do think that we have a good, strong legal argument to say that the pension trust is not owned by Xcel. It's not their assets, and so it does not belong in rate base. Additionally, as you know, ratepayers already pay for pension expense based on an actuary study in their rates. So over time, they will pay for all pension expense. So there's not really a need for this prepaid pension asset. Under generally accepted accounting principles, you do base the pension trust based on the funded status, and the funded status is a net liability. So if you follow GAAP, they don't have a regulatory asset. They only have a regulatory asset because of this tracking mechanism that they're doing for certain components. As noted by our expert, Stephen Hunt, who was the former chief accountant for GDS, now works with GDS as a consultant, this is not a prepaid. FERC concluded it's not a prepaid. Instead, it's like a tracker balance, like we would have for either like a tracker account or reg asset. When you have a tracker account, you would look, what's the statutory authority? There's no statutory authority for this tracker, and the commission hasn't approved it. These costs go back to 2009. They're way outside the test year. They needed a reg asset. No Minnesota utility has ever requested for this regulatory asset, and the commission hasn't approved it. So I respectfully disagree that there's a reg asset. And who paid for this? Well, again, ratepayers pay for pension expense based on an actuary study. Shareholders don't pay for market returns, the gains. They can increase this pension asset based on negative pension expense without any contribution. So there's a lot of junk in here that I don't think ratepayers should pay. So I don't think Xcel has met their burden. And for all these reasons, I really think the commission should deny it.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Ms. Brahma, do you dispute that market gains affect the pension?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, what we dispute is that the market gains in any way return to shareholders. They do not. What they do is they decrease the pension expense paid by ratepayers every year. So in this instance, the prepaid pension asset is not only funding a cost of service for employees and retirees of the company, it's also reducing the amount ratepayers are paying in pension expense on an annual basis. And to Ms. Campbell's question about negative pension expense, the evidence is clear. There has never been negative pension expense for Xcel Energy's plan. Their accounting methods that they use, which this commission has long supported and is part of the fundamentals of how pension accounting works, do not allow for negative pension expense for Xcel Energy. And I could respond to each of Ms. Campbell's additional points, but there are several that I think we consider fundamentally incorrect. The negative pension expense comment is one of those.
I think this conversation, I don't know if any of my colleagues have additional questions, but I do think that the conversation here I'm still back to where I started. And I think that it's the company's charge to meet its burden, and I don't think the company has met its burden. I don't think it's clear cut. And from my perspective, I'm ready to make a motion to move decision option 3 to deny. But I'd be happy to hear any additional question or hear from any additional colleagues.
Commissioner Sullivan, I agree with you and think it's consistent with the commission's past practices. I know Ms. Brahma did say in 2013 that it was included in our rate case, but staff noted to me that it wasn't litigated and it was sort of like the first overlooked, I guess, as not being something that did occur. So stating that it's a past practice may be a bit of an overstatement. I also think that in light of the fact that we just finished a contentious fully litigated rate case with Xcel, your conclusion is reasonable and will help the commission manage affordability concerns that we're increasingly hearing about from the public. And so I'm supportive of your motion and think it results in fair and reasonable outcome for all parties involved. And I would also just note to the company that this has come up repeatedly. Of course, like, you can continue to litigate it, and that's your right, but it is somewhat frustrating that we can't just like figure out a solution on how to move forward, which I thought was, and maybe I'm overstating that, because maybe in the rate case a couple of weeks ago it was like, we'll track the expenses now, and hopefully the company isn't going to contest that. And back to my point of like, let's just move forward and try to find a way to resolve this and move ahead. So,
one other thing one of the things that and I'll just kind of give you the company an insight into my thinking, is that I recognize that there is some type of contribution within this kind of amalgam that would be recoverable if the company had done the accounting and showed it was necessary pursuant to the Court of Appeals decision. But I didn't see it there. But that being said, like, I was like, that's why I denied. But that was also part of my decision for why I was fine with a higher ROE. Like, the company was accepting some more risk. So, I mean, from my perspective, go ahead, litigate it. That's fine. But
9.25.
But next time around, it could be lower, because there's less risk now.
Commissioner Hum.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. Yeah, I have a lot of things to discuss with the company based on what I just heard, but I'm not going to discuss with the company because I think we made that decision in the most recent rate case decision. I think that's why I proposed the tracker as a kind of a middle ground. I think that this is the end of the overall process rather than we keep litigating this. But it is what it is, but I think I can support your motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor of Commissioner Sullivan's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned for the day. Have a nice weekend, and our best to the first responders and everyone working on the wildfire issue.